Hello, thank you for tuning in. So this is from Richard Dawkins' channel on YouTube. He went into a London school fairly recently, and he spoke to a class of high schoolers. It looks to me like they're sort of age 15, 16, probably doing their GCSEs in Britain. And he's mainly asking them questions about the theory of evolution and religion, God, etc. So we're not going to look at everything. I've picked out two clips really where he's focusing on the question of God. So let's just have a listen to that and see what comes of it.
Do some of you favor one creation myth? Do some of you favor the Rama creation myth, for example? Anybody favor that? What about the Adam and Eve ones? Anybody favor the Adam and Eve one?
I do.
You do?
Yes.
Yeah. And why do you favor the Adam and Eve one?
That's interesting because he said, do any of you favor the Rama myth? Do any of you favor the Adam and Eve myth? And this girl has said, yes, I favor the Adam and Eve myth. I would think she would say, sir, it's not a myth. It really happened.
Because I was brought up to believe it.
You're brought up to believe it. Is that a good reason to believe something, do you think?
Yeah, because I went to church since I was little, so...
Yeah, and it says it in the Bible.
Yeah.
She didn't really answer his question. He asked, is it a good idea to believe something on that basis? She's not really answering that question. She's just expanding that, yes, she went to church and effectively she was indoctrinated into that religion.
Yes, but in the Hindu sacred scriptures, it says something different, doesn't it?
Yeah, but they're brought up to believe that when they're little.
Yes. So you mean everybody should just believe what they're brought up to believe, even though they contradict each other?
Yeah, but people change when they get older. Like, some people will convert from being Hindu to Christianity.
Or from Christianity to...
Yeah, and what she should be doing to complete that statement is saying, and some people become atheists, some people drop religion completely.
being Hindu?
Yeah.
Yes. And you're happy about that, are you?
Yeah.
Okay, it's a very satisfied position to be in.
It's a very satisfied position to be in. Satisfied, yes. Correct, no. Rational, no.
Yeah.
Keep that one going, but sort of related to evolution and the science.
Yes.
The science.
If you were to ask me why I believe what I believe, which is evolution, the very last thing I would say is because I was brought up to believe it. Absolutely the last thing I would say. I would say the reason I believe it is because here is the evidence. And I would say here's a book of evidence, and here's another book of evidence, and here's another book of evidence. And you can go and look at fossils, you can go and look at DNA evidence, you can look at the evidence of the geographical distribution of animals and plants. That's evidence. Saying that it says so in my holy book, what kind of evidence is that? Does anybody seriously think that the evidence of a book that was written a few 100,000 years ago by somebody who obviously didn't know anything, how could they?
Okay, I don't want to be too critical on Richard Dawkins here because he's doing it all off the cuff, but I would point out that in religious books, we haven't got evidence because he's saying, do you really think it's a good idea to believe this book of evidence? It's not evidence, it's a claim. Religions are full of claims. They can be found in holy books. And what you've got to do, what you've got to teach your children to do, is go out and check those claims in those books. Go out and examine the scientific evidence and see whether the scientific evidence actually corroborates the claims which are in those books, the scientific and the historical evidence. So, no, it's not evidence. It's claims.
They know anything in those days. You're seriously saying that you take that more seriously than the evidence of fossils, the evidence of DNA, the evidence of geographical distribution, the evidence of comparative anatomy, comparative physiology. Does anybody really want to defend that position?
Well, I do. I believe in God because whenever I read a book, or in my religion, Islam, whenever I read a book or something, they got all the evidence that they wrote at that time, but they didn't know, and they found out it's right now. So
they found out
it's right now. So
it's right now. So
everything they wrote is right.
For example, they wrote about dinosaurs, and they wrote about.
No, they didn't write about these things, but they wrote like about how the baby develops, and no one knew that time.
Okay, I've checked out this claim. I've checked out this claim, and the embryology in the Koran was already known a long time before that. Apparently, the ancient Greeks had already worked that out, so this knowledge was already known, and Muslims were just simply writing down already extant knowledge. Dawkins didn't know. He wasn't ready for that. But it's fairly irrelevant. So obviously the boy doesn't know. He's been told by his, I don't know, clerics that the Quran is full of accurate information. I've done more research on the Quran. There are so many mistakes. There are so many mathematical mistakes and scientific mistakes. It would take a long time to go through them. So he's absolutely wrong that they were right about everything. But, you know, Dawkins didn't know. He wasn't ready. He didn't have that information ready. But never mind. Let's keep listening.
And they find it out now.
Yeah. So your criterion for agreeing with it is that science has found out certain things, and lo and behold, you find that something like that was in your holy book. Why not just go to the modern evidence and say, well, that's what I believe because it is the evidence supports it. Why do you go back to your holy book and say, oh, well, I believe in the holy book because it said that? Why don't you just say, I believe in these facts because that's what the evidence shows. The evidence shows that babies develop in this way.
Richard.
Yeah.
That's not quite an adequate rebuttal, because what they're saying is that these holy books are presenting what we now know are modern scientific facts, and that in those days they couldn't have known those facts, and that therefore a God must have given them this information. So I don't think that Dawkins really quite properly rebutted that. But as I've pointed out, once you actually start investigating these so-called facts, you find that there are errors and problems everywhere in both the Old Testament and the Koran, and they got things wrong more times than they got things right.
Didn't Charles Darwin write a book which...
Okay, I'm going to move forward now later when they start discussing God again.
Because like every religion got something like to believe, and then people come up with theories and facts, so they might be confused about it. They don't know what to believe.
They might be confused about it. What do people think about that? It's such a bad thing to be confused that we should all stop learning anything. Does that anybody else agree?
I think the idea here is that science is always changing, and there are so many competing theories, and it's also confusing. It's better to have a holy book that is going to tell you exactly how everything is, and you can just stick with that. It's a lot less confusing. I think that's the point he's making.
What discussion to think about that? I mean,
Well, because like I believe in my religion, so whenever I read about evolution or that, I can't understand it. I don't believe it. Just like believe my religion. So
Right. So you know what you believe when you start, and any new book that says anything different, you don't read it, or what?
even if we got evidence, so just like I follow the stronger evidence, which is the holy book. So
So the reason you believe it is because that's the one you were told first. Is that a good general principle, that anything you're told first
like
you believe?
I'm finding out like more things about God and the creation. So
Well, what is he finding out? I mean, in detail. First, he's saying that when it comes to the theory of evolution, it's so complicated and it's so confusing. And, well, actually, he's got stronger evidence, and his stronger evidence is the Holy Koran. And now he's saying that he's discovering more and more things all the time about the creation, about the creator, Allah, etc. But what is he really discovering? He's not really saying.
whenever I like read something, I just like find out the right thing, and I don't know.
Okay, so as I've got it right. You know what you believe because it says so in the Quran.
Yeah.
Whenever you read anything that contradicts the Quran, you say that must be wrong.
It might be.
Yeah. Anybody else agree with that? Anybody else disagree?
Well, he could have, Dawkins could have picked him up on that, because he was actually going in the right direction when he said it might be. And then the next question is, how do we know if it's right or wrong? How do we check it? This is the first point of actually a good rational epistemological method. It might be right, it might be wrong. We don't know. We have to start looking at the evidence. Unfortunately for this young man, the evidence of the Quran has got so much authority in his eyes that whatever it says goes. It trumps everything else. But there was a little glimmer of light there when he said it might be wrong, or it might be right. And the follow-up from Dawkins could have been better.
Agree with it. Yeah?
I kind of disagree with that. I think the idea of religion and evolution sort of having a bit of a... I think the thing is that people have been religion's been indoctrinated into people from a young age, and people believe whatever you've been brought up to believe. I think that's mainly dominates your views
Yes.
on a lot of the things that the new things you learn. like if people have been brought up with a very strong background in religion and been brought up to believe in creationism and that Adam and Eve or something, just the idea of anything new kind of is so alien to them that they don't want to accept it.
Were you brought up in a religion?
I've been brought up with a religion, but I think I believe in evolution, but I believe the whole like cause and effect theory about how the cause of evolution was creation, was God.
Which religion were you brought up in?
I've been brought up with Hinduism, but I believe in like the more sort of Einsteinian religion kind of a thing.
Yes.
Like,
but, I mean, so you brought up in a Hindu religion. He's brought up in Islam. Some of you being brought up Christian. Do you ever argue with each other about the contradictions between your different religions? Yeah.
The thing is, there are so many theories. And they say that theory is based on facts. So I think that's why people are confused and they argue about which one's right.
Yes. Well, I don't know how many different religions are represented in this room, but they all contradict each other. And
I would have thought what he could have said there was, okay, you've all got different religious views. You disagree. How can we evaluate which one of your religions is correct? That would have been a good place to go. And then he could have started asking, for example, a Christian, what evidence have you got to back up your beliefs that Jesus is the Savior, that God exists, and he came down in the form of Jesus Christ, etc. What's your evidence to support that? Because I've got evidence to support the theory of evolution and science. What evidence have you got to support your religious beliefs? But he didn't say it.
And we have the scientific evidence as well. Do any of you think there's some reason to favour any one of those over the others?
Good question. All right.
No? No reason?
Yeah. Some of them sound more believable, as in they're easier to understand than others, because evolution, people think that it's like so amazing that it happened, just random coincidence, that they believe like it started because of something else. So it's easier to understand for other people. That's why they'd rather believe in religion.
I must stop you for a moment. It's not random coincidence. It's natural selection, which is very non-random.
I'm very glad he said that. And I guess that when children are living with religious parents and they're discussing these things or listening to their parents, and they hear that it's either this one big chaotic random chance or it's a God, what are they going to go with? Of course they're going to go with a God. And yeah, Dawkins is right. It's not random. Okay, well, that's about it. I'd just like to say that there were about probably 25, 30 children in that class. Only a small number of them took part. And I would guess that there are some really intelligent children in that class with a good epistemological method to only accept claims if there's evidence to support them, sufficient evidence to support them. And that those who were speaking up were the religious, maybe religious minority. And I think that there are probably some really intelligent children in that class, but we didn't hear from them. We heard from those who believe in religions. So Dawkins, I thought he did a fairly good job overall. I think he made one or two slip-ups. I think he should probably acquaint himself a bit more with some of the claims that apologists are making for the Koran, such as that there are all these scientific truths in the Koran, which is demonstrably untrue. So hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.